Fabulous. I always try not to pull a funny face when that starts recording because I get caught in awful pictures. So we're joined by Jeremy today. He's going to be talking us through everything capture planning. So everything that we need to know, how do we approach it? And how do we roll that out within our business? So it's super interesting because we had a chat last week, didn't we, Jeremy? And we ran through. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So Jeremy, let's start. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can see some familiar faces on the call, so potentially slightly cringeworthy, but we'll give it a go anyway. And
we love a bit of cringe.
So yeah, Jeremy Brim. I've got a 20-year career in winning work, and this whole span of that. So I've grown up in bid teams like many of the people I can see on the call, you know, through being a bid coordinator and bid manager at Mouchel, the outsourcing firm many years ago, where I was lucky enough to be allowed to tag along as a youngster with a bunch of people who went on to be very successful. And I've kind of followed through a large part of my career. So I ended up following some of those guys and girls to EC Harris, the preeminent quantity surveying PM practice, where I had a series of roles, but I became the second youngest associate in the 100-year history of the firm. The youngest was the chairman, Richard Clare, at the time. Ended up leading their global strategic pursuits team, where we won the cost management of all the Qatar World Cup stadia, all of Ericsson's estate and Microsoft's estate all around the world, big program offices, integrators, all of that exciting stuff in the built environment world. And then the bastards, the partners, sold the firm to Arcadis. So I stuck around for a year, but realised it wasn't perhaps going to be quite as exciting. A lot of the people that I enjoyed working with, the senior dudes and dudettes, were going to take their earnouts and leave or go to places in the world where I didn't really want to go. So had a couple of years out helping first a couple of large debt recovery transaction firms come together. They'd both been bought by the same VC firm. So did that for about 6 months, and then I got headhunted by one of their smaller, more interesting competitors, JBW, where I helped over the course of a couple of years scale and then sell the firm. So when I joined, it had failed to sell 3 times for around 10 million. I helped them win some key deals, build out their pipeline and write their IM, and sold the business for 26 million. So Jamie, that owns it or owned it, now lives on a yacht, has a helicopter. And then my last real job was with Mace, the people who built the Shard and the London Eye. And for the first time, I joined as the number 2 in the construction bid team, and very quickly Matt Goff, the main man, got promoted and started doing other things. So I became the leader of a construction bid team rather than a professional services one for the first time. So learned a lot about construction and its level of detail and quirks compared to many other sectors, and quite successfully helped the business go from 1 billion to 2 billion as part of a big leadership team. And I had all the bid writers, bid managers, but also introduced capture into that sphere for the first time. So we won Tottenham Stadium as a team, Battersea Power Station, etc. I was very lucky. I had a very high quality team of bid managers, bid writers, but also transitioned to capture people to position us for these things. So that's the long story of the track record, I guess. In 2018, in April 2018, my dad, who's quite a senior finance director type, lectures with the ACCA, etc. He took me to one side and less than politely explained I was making other people rich again, and I should consider my life choices. And so we have a £1 bet, which is that I need to make some money by the time I'm 50, or be in a position where I don't have to work anymore by the time I'm 50. I'm 43 now. But actually, it's not really about that. It's about doing more of what I enjoy, being positively disruptive, making a difference for clients, and just enjoying myself a bit more, doing more of what I enjoy and what I'm good at, bigger crossover of that. So I started a business called Growth Ignition in the October 2018. So we've had our 3rd anniversary, where we consult or undertake transformation programs with clients like Morgan Sindall, Done some work with ISG, and more recently my anchor client in that space is an MMC focused contractor called Midgroup, where we do some market research, where's the money going to be, rewrite their business plan, get it signed off with the board, and then execute a waterfall effect of what their tactical marketing plan looks like, account plans for the top 5 clients or prospects, and then quite importantly, capture plans for their top 5 pursuits, and then help them with some bidding activity, train their people in bidding, and all of the above really. And if you take Morgan Sindall as an example, my first anchor client from 2018 until most of the way through 20, we have taken that business through using that approach from 30 million turnover to 100 million this year, which was the target we'd set ourselves. They've grown all of the key accounts that we'd outlined, and they won all 5 of the capture plans. They won the deals that were the outcomes of the capture plans that we'd pursued. So it was quite satisfying and a great case study of what we do. And then I have a few plates spinning, but the other thing is I own a platform called the Bid Toolkit, which is an online bid processing guide with training and tools to download baked into it, which is APMP accredited for foundation in the bidding space, and then practitioner in the capture space upstream. And so that's available at thebidtoolkit.com for B2C. Anyone can look at the content for free and then pay to watch the videos or download the tools. But we also sell enterprise deployments of that to clients like ISG, Quad, Stantec. There's quite a few of them both in the UK and around the world now, where all of their staff 24/7 can access our training content and our tools baked into their intranet or external passworded site. And then around that, we deliver training programs of structured learning and social learning as well, programs of webinars, podcasts, workshops, all kinds of things, all focused on making work-winning best practice sticky for an organization, so we get true adoption over time, rather than just sending a small number of people on a training course where they'll remember 10% of what they learn 72 hours later. It's about momentum and getting into the DNA of the business. I realised I've rattled off quite a lot, but there's a bit going on, so hopefully that covers.
We went on the journey with you.
Yeah, why not?
The thing is, you've got absolutely massive, iconic household names that you've just spoken us through, and that's only scratching the surface, isn't it? Because I know how much work that you've done over the years. So for everyone's benefit on this call, and there's going to be people that think, well, what is capture planning? Can you give us kind of an overview of what capture planning is?
Yes. So I'll give you my view, and I know we're going to talk about the differences internationally in a bit.
Yeah.
So let's give it some context. So I'm sure we've all been there. You know, when you get invited to a bidders conference by a client and you're sitting in a room with 50 other people from all your competitors, you know, there's some people you used to work with over there, there's some competitor over here that you don't like very much, who have been a bit aggressive and whatnot, and at the front there's a bunch of fairly nervous client people, usually with a procurement person sitting next to them, you know, behind a table with a screen behind them, giving a presentation on what they're looking to buy. And if you're smart, you'll realize quite quickly that if you don't know what they're going to say next before they say it, somebody else in the room probably does, and in all likelihood you're not going to win fundamentally. And that's the feeling that you get if you haven't deployed capture, or at least pursued an opportunity in advance of tender. So I know, you know, as bidding professionals, many of us find ourselves, because the discipline of bidding is fairly immature, despite it having been around, and our association, the APMP, having been around for 30 years. We've had a UK chapter for 20 years odd. Actually, in many organisations, or in most organisations actually, bid teams are treated as an admin function. The approach of the business is throw enough mud and see what sticks. So tendering everything or quite too much, thrashing your bid teams, working late nights, weekends, all that horrible stuff that people experience, and that's a symptom of a bigger disease or cause, that the organisation isn't mature in its approach to winning work and scaling its business. you've got people all over the place, fundamentally wasting shed loads of cost of sale, costing the business loads of money, but usually invisibly because people don't fill out timesheets or don't account for it effectively. And so what's Capture? So Capture is fairly immature in Europe and particularly in the UK. If you search on LinkedIn, there are very few people in the UK that have the title Capture Manager, which is, as we're going to come on to, in the States, particularly East Coast, you find a shed load of jobs, a whole long list of people who are called a Capture Manager. So in our world, from a UK-centric perspective, Capture is about filling that gap. If you've got some activity going on, excuse me, at the top end around business planning and maybe account planning of your key clients. So an account plan is a plan for a client and all their opportunities. In really basic terms, a Capture plan is a marketing or BD activity plan over perhaps 18 months, certainly over a year, for your biggest pursuits, where you plan out how you're going to win that single opportunity. So first rule is Capture plans are for one opportunity. They're not to be confused with account plans, which are the entire client across various sectors or facets of their business. And so it's a very focused campaign. It's a live document and series of activities that takes place perhaps a year to 18 months before a tender would come out. And why do you do it? Well, the objectives are, number one, to negotiate the piece of work with the client. Position yourself alongside them and work with the client to build a solution which then only you can deliver, which delivers far more value for them than if they competitively tendered a specification, because you've really co-solutioned how to extract the absolute maximum out of the solution for the client, how you're going to deliver the service or build the product or whatever it might be that they're looking to buy. And so why is that important? Well, the slightly sad fact is, for all of us bidding people on the call, is that bidding's absolutely mental in terms of cost of sale. Fundamentally, when I used to train partners and associates at EC Harris years ago, I used to get some stern looks, because one of the first things I'd say was that if you see me with my bidding hat on, you've failed as a salesperson. They're part of their scorecard. Everybody had 20% of their scorecard, their appraisal was growth of turnover or margin with clients, winning work. And if you see us as bidding people with that hat on, fundamentally you've failed to negotiate the piece of work. And they'd always come back at me with, oh, well, it's public sector and it's got to go through a process. Well, actually, you're either on or should get on a framework where clients can direct award work with you. But what I would say is the very worst position for your key opportunities that you should be in is that you've basically written the ITT for the client. So I recognise I've rambled a bit, but Capture is about absolutely optimizing your chances of winning through positioning and working with clients way in advance of tender, with the optimum outcome is that you negotiate the piece of work without competition, or the worst case is there's a tender but you're always going to win it.
So Jeremy, do you think that's kind of more teetering on the edge of like building relationships, long-standing relationships, having an understanding of your client and really getting down to the nitty-gritty baseline that it is, that you can then have an open and honest conversation with that client to then avoid the bidding process and be allocated that work directly? Is that right?
Yeah, well, ultimately for the key decision maker, yes, but it's unfortunately bigger and more complex than that, and hence why Capture is required. And by the way, I should say, because everyone will automatically think, oh, this is loads of work, you couldn't possibly do it on every tender, and you're absolutely right, you can't. What you should do is perhaps select, I'm working with a client at the moment where we're selecting their top 20% of their client base for account planning, and then we're going to undertake 3 Capture plans per sector per year and mobilize that. So this is an activity that is a focused effort, because it's an expensive thing to do. You've got lots of time and effort going into this, but it's about maximizing your opportunity, because 80% of your work should come from 20%, your top 20% of your clients. And in fact, at the other end, you should look to cut the tail of clients that aren't delivering the margin
So then when it comes to capture, for people that are sat on this call and they're probably just getting to grips, because you said the UK, we're miles behind the USA. It's been something they've been doing for years, and they're at the forefront, and I guess the innovation side of capture, and we're playing catch up. For anyone that's on this call, if they're going to look at kind of, like you said, wearing a bid manager hat or a bid hat, but then also falling into this capture manager role, what's kind of the importance in capture? What's the driving factors, and what are the considerations that people need to make if they're going to kind of step across and really engage in that side of the business? If there is any driving
there's loads. Yeah, there's loads. That's quite an expansive question. It's good stuff. So I mean, first of all, I believe that capture is a fantastic opportunity for bidding people to grow their sphere of influence and value for organisations they work in. Fundamentally, get paid more, have a bigger role in the business. It's a way of getting your line of sight closer to the board. You know, escalating your career. Because let's cover off the maturity in the bit versus the state. So. And I think there are some Americans on the call, so do go along with this and take it in the right spirit. But fundamentally, I believe, and it might be a slightly caustic thing to say, but the UK is the best country in the world at bidding for work, fundamentally. And all of the big consultants, you know, the big brands in this space globally will secretly tell you that. They won't say it publicly because they don't want to piss off clients. But I don't mind, because it's true, and it's an opportunity to help the Yanks improve and fix things, which is slightly perverse considering that the APMP is American, Shipley, who are the biggest brand in the space, are American. But yeah, fundamentally, UK firms, if they're in a toe-to-toe fight on a bid without having done any capture, you know, miraculously an opportunity for a big opportunity, you know, comes out cold to the world, and any firm anywhere in the world could bid it. If on a fair and level field, I would bet a reasonable amount of money that a UK firm or UK bid team would win it. Having said that, in capture, it's the other way round, and perhaps how a lot of the bigger, interesting American firms still have a high win rate is that they are more focused on this and have been doing it for some time. You find a cluster of capture best practice on the East Coast, around DC, around Washington, because there's a lot of focus on their military contracts and federal contracts, where they can see those, you know, quasi public sector deals coming from quite a way off. They're very cyclical in the States. You know, there's lots of, you can see these deals coming from quite far out. And so they're able to adopt capture. Now, the key difference between what I've seen, and I've done some podcast stuff on this in the past with colleagues in the States, where we've had this open conversation, is that in the States, they have professional capture managers that take an opportunity through from it being assessed as an opportunity a year to 18 months or more out. They take it through all the way through capture, but they stay with it through the live bid process and even into mobilization. So they truly capture an opportunity through its entire life cycle and into making money. So they make sure that the deal that you win, so they make sure you win it or negotiate it, and then they make sure that you set the business up for success in how it delivers it. Because what's the point of winning deals if the business is only going to go and screw it up and lose money, right? Yeah. Which happens a lot. And so I think that's really clever. But in terms of maturity, you know, budget, all that kind of stuff for UK firms, you tend to find that we're not in that space yet. We don't know what capture is as a country, and certainly even in Europe is less mature than us. And so capture tends to be a subject that either some account management or BD people try and pick up, or the smarter bid teams have started to grow their sphere of influence with. And you start to see bid managers operating the capture plan as the facilitator or the project manager of that plan. And I think that's a good first baby step for us in the UK. And it's what I did with my team at Mace, was I assigned each of my bid managers a capture plan each from the pipeline. So we agreed with the business what the top 6 or 8 opportunities were going to be for the year, and we assigned each of those opportunities to a bid manager as part of their development, actually, to try and get ahead of those opportunities. Why is that important? Well, you in effect become the master of your own destiny, right? Because you're going to end up being the bid manager on it anyway. You might as well do all the strategy stuff that you'd end up doing in a very constrained amount of time at the start of a bid over the course of a year, because capture really is just that same activity in terms of agreeing who's going to lead the pursuit, analysing the knowledge we've got to date, researching the opportunity, understanding, doing the relationship mapping piece, perhaps over time a bidder comparison matrix if you're an APMP-ish person, and certainly your competition analysis, and then getting into trying to define or work with the client on a solution to their challenges, and all of that. That, for me, that requires some project management skills, which bid managers tend to naturally have in spades, whereas BD people tend to be more sporadic. They're quite red in the insights profile. They're quite directive, but not necessarily methodical. And I think bid managers are in a great place to grab this as an opportunity, pitch to the business that they should be experimenting with capture at least on 1 or 2 key opportunities in your pipeline. A big rebid that's in a year or two's time, a big project with a current client you've got, whatever it might be. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity.
So I think really kind of when you were talking then, and I just wrote it down, the importance of capture is really a cradle to grave scenario, isn't it? Because like you said, it's agreeing where you've got potential, where we know that a bid's going to come from and there's going to be an opportunity to win business. And I guess that throughout the whole journey of that, by doing your research, really getting to grips with that client, experiencing the whole bid journey with them. But I'm guessing it doesn't just stop there, does it? Capture doesn't stop when the bid's been won, but then you keep going of winning that client's relationship over, ready for the next one. So then they say, Jeremy, can you come and have a chat with us? We want your opinion or your insight on this, this, and this. So it's about the whole process, isn't it? It's a constant work with capture. It doesn't have a start and an end point. I guess it's constantly growing and maturing and developing.
Yeah, well, it's about what we used to say in EC Harris when I was an account leader as well as a bidding person there. So I was market facing for 3 years as well, and I was trained in becoming a trusted advisor is the term, because fundamentally people buy people. For all the magic and wonder that all the people on the call provide for their organisations in the bidding space, all of the work we do in terms of proposition and how we storyboard our responses and all of that kind of stuff, relationships trump everything else, by spades. Relationships eat everything else for breakfast. If where we want to be through capture is that there is no surprises. Certainly the top 3 to 5 CVs in your bid, they should be people that the client recognises and trusts to a point, or at very least they need to have met them and understood that they're someone they could work with. Because on things that you're capturing, it's probably a piece of work or a service or a product that the relationship on it's going to last in years, not months. It could be a year, could be 2 years, could be 10 years if it's a big outsourcing deal or something. And fundamentally, they are buying your people to help them deliver on their scorecard and their appraisal. The performance of the people they're buying will directly impact their bonus, their promotion, all of that kind of stuff. So selfishly, there's that. They need to trust you to deliver. But the second aspect is they need to want to work with you. No one really wants to turn up to work and have to work with some arsehole consultant that you've procured, and dread coming into work every day because they're painful to work with, difficult, argumentative or whatever it might be. They need to believe, and this is why on a lot of really big deals these days you get things like assessment centres where they test your personality DNA and all that kind of stuff to check the fit. on really big stuff, because it makes such a big difference to performance on projects and programs, where people just get along, see eye to eye, understand what each other's roles and responsibilities are. And so we can tackle a lot of that in Capture before a bid ever comes out. We can select our team that we would deploy on a project once we've understood the client and their team, and what's important to them. You can hand pick your team so that it syncs and the client trusts them. So that mapping out of who all the key stakeholders are, and quite importantly, what's important to them and their sphere of influence, how important are they on the decision, the purchase decision. And a key watch out there is that it's not necessarily the most senior person who's the most important on the buying decision. It could well be a fairly lowly middle manager who actually marks bids or signs off on the deal, or makes a recommendation to the board to sign off. Once they've made that recommendation, it's quite difficult to unwind those things for senior people. I've had a client recently who'd been whining and dining a board director of a client organisation for months and months and months, not realising it was a lowly middle manager in a different office somewhere else in the country completely that actually made the decision. They lost the deal because they hadn't engaged with the right person. So it's really good fun when you get it right, and you see these things kind of smoothly happen, unfold as you want to see it unfold.
And it's interesting, really, because we've spoken to other leaders in various different businesses and different positions, and their general, and it's funny that you've just said that, because every single person at various stages throughout a bid all say that communicating with your clients and your internal team is a paramount. It has to be top of their agenda and of their things to do, as well as understanding their client. And I think a lot of people forget that. And it's easy because bids come in, and I spoke to a client 2 weeks ago who said that sometimes you literally shoot from the hip on some things because it becomes that static, that it's just a generic question. And then when it comes down to marking, they end up losing points on that because they've just generically answered it and given the client what they thought that they wanted to know. So we spoke earlier about, and we've got people on this call that are dealing with international bids, and we spoke about the difference between us in the UK and US and how they approach capture, and they have, I guess, kind of like a knowledge of capture that we don't in the UK at the moment. Do you want to run us through the difference and where we're at and where you think that we'll end up going with capture planning?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to something that I refer to as joining the dots, really. And you find a disconnect in so many organisations. So many companies are actually not very well run, or it's actually really easy to run a fairly mediocre business and just sort of bumble along, and people kind of get caught up in that. What we find in businesses that are sort of not the highest performers yet is there's a disconnect between, so they undertake some business planning every year with a 3-year horizon. They go through all of that pain before the start of their financial year. They sign it off, and then it just goes in a cupboard for the year, and then they write another one the following year, and they're not necessarily scoring themselves on performance against that business plan. Because what we're talking about here is a pyramid effect. So what should happen is you set the objectives of the business at a business plan level. As a subset of that, you'll have a marketing plan, which should be connected to the key messages and streams of activity in your business plan. So if you want to start a new business activity in building data centers, say, there should be a piece of the marketing plan and probably a go-to-market strategy for data centers. How are you going to do it? Who you need to talk to, what the value proposition is, all that kind of stuff. And then there's a bunch of marketing activity month by month that propels those conversations. And then you have account plans with the top 5 or top accounts for your business, which are obviously across that business plan. So it's nicely aligned with your business plan. So in your business plan, you should have a database that shows where all your work's going to come from, from secured work, work that exists, you're courting in the pipeline, and then work to find in a per sector. and by service. You should be able to cut it in lots of different ways as part of, the numbers aren't the entire business plan, but it's a good part of it. And so your marketing plan and your account plan should be aligned with that. And then your capture plans probably should be a subset of it. You should capture plan active opportunities that are from your key accounts. I would assume your best opportunities should be coming from your best and most important clients, but not always. There might be something left of field. And so, what we tend to find is that quite often that stuff isn't connected up. So the business plan goes in a cupboard's forgotten. The marketing team are doing what they think is right, but probably isn't connected to the pipeline, the real pipeline of opportunities you've got. So they might be spending all their time or lots of their time and activity doing a bunch of thought leadership stuff on a sector that actually isn't the priority, when there's a bunch of opportunities over here that they should be focusing on. We find that disconnect very often. And then there's also the disconnect between marketing and your BD people and then your bidding people. So marketing's over there, messaging over here. Your BD people are saying something different to a different collection of clients over there and spitting out a load of opportunities that your bid team ends up bidding, which aren't necessarily well positioned for. And so there's a bigger ecosystem piece here in joining the dots between all of that. And I believe the bid team in an organisation can play a key role in facilitating all of that, or influencing the business down the right lines to get that alignment. Because when you get that right and you're maximising the return on investment in both marketing, BD, and into bidding, it's just so much more effective. You find the win rates are far higher. You smash your targets. Your cost of sales reduced. It sings as a machine, but it's actually very rare that that's all joined up. It's only the top performing organizations we find that are aligned like that. And so that's something that's actually not that wildly difficult to fix. And capture of your key pursuits is a key building block at the heart of that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense though, doesn't it? I think to be at the forefront and know before something's coming, it's like having a crystal ball, I guess. Knowing what's coming, how it's going to work, how it's going to pan out, what direction the client's going to go in. Because like you said, it's going to be a horrible experience if you're putting all this energy and this financially a huge commitment as well to wine and dine a client and to take them out, take them to the races. We've all been there, done it and got the t-shirt. And then it drops on the table and you think, well, where on earth did I go wrong on this one? So I think done right and executed well, it could make a huge difference between winning and losing a job, hey?
Oh, for sure. Well, and actually the prospects of the business and certainly the profitability, because what you tend to find as well is if you capture an opportunity, certainly if you manage to negotiate it, it's better value for the client, but there's bigger margins for your organisation as well. Because fundamentally what we all do in terms of our work with our clients or our employers, but what our organizations all do is create value for a client. We're saving them money or time. We're creating what I call smiley faces, in whether it's reduced sickness or greater educational attainment, whatever the outcome might be. And in return, we're just asking for a slice of that value that we create. So the bigger the value you create, the more you can get rewarded. You can get into things like value share deals, where you might be able to engineer with a client that if they did a standard procurement, they might save £1 million, but actually if they negotiate it with you on a value share deal, you'll save them £3 million, but you want to keep $500,000 of that instead of your £100,000 fee. There's you can do all sorts of interesting things if you get yourself ahead of the game.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It's definitely food for thought, isn't it? I think a lot of people on this, a lot of managing directors are going to be quaking out there because everyone's going to jump off this call and have a meeting and say, let me be the capture planner for our business.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I think it's a great opportunity. We were going to touch on the sort of the things we know to be true, weren't we, or important things in amongst this. And so, because this is a change program, fundamentally, however big or small you go with implementing capture in your organization, I always advise taking baby steps, because adoption's more important than detail. Even if you do a capture plan fairly badly, you'll still have a better outcome than not having done it at all. So there's the four things that we know three or four things we know to be true as we say it. So because it's a change program, number one is sponsorship. So go and engage someone important in your organization. Do your homework. Don't just take my word for it. But go and do your homework on capture and what it could mean for your organization. Come up with a bit of a hypothesis as to the value to the business. If it improved your win rate by 30%, what does that equate to in monetary terms for the business in terms of greater returns, but also bidding less reduces your cost of sale. Do that sort of math stuff. But whatever you do, get yourself a sponsor. Because what we find is where there isn't a sponsor involved in any form of change, implementing a bit of bid process, bid training, capture stuff, account management, whatever it is, it tends to fizzle out. You don't get the support of the board and senior people, and your best people in the business probably won't be as interested. And so if you get someone senior behind you as a sponsor, you tend to find that you attract the best resources. The adoption tends to be far greater because they're role modeling the right behaviors around it at a senior level and talking about it in the right spheres. So there's almost a kind of work with them on a little internal comms program where capture comes up in discussions in the right places and is considered in your pipeline meetings for key pursuits, whatever it might be. So number one's sponsorship. Number two is value. As I just mentioned, that we need to focus on the value that we create for clients and taking a share of that. If we focus on that value for them, you're far more likely to win. And as we all know as bidding people, most of your stakeholders you work with on bids aren't very good at benefits and value for clients. They tend to just focus on how they want to deliver the service, what they do every day. Whereas if we focus on how you deliver the service in such a way that creates greater value, then that will be game changing for you. And then again, just recounting trust, people by people. It's about getting your key people in front of clients, working with clients. Do a bit of free work, do a bit of pre-construction work. Socially get people in front of people to build that human connection and trust. It makes an incredible difference to your win rate. And then the fourth one's data or research. And so we've all been in those bid no bid meetings where you've got ITTs turned up and everybody's just regurgitating what it says in the ITT at best. They're blagging it in terms of reasons why you should bid something. Whereas capture is partly to inform a robust bid no bid decision at a point in time. A great outcome from capture might be that you don't bid something and save yourself £500,000 in bid costs because you're always going to lose it. You've done a bidder comparison matrix and it shows that the incumbent's going to smash you to bits. They're 30% cheaper. They've got a better solution. They've got a better piece of technology. They've got a team that's already done it before. Very difficult to unseat them. A great outcome is to go and spend that cost of bid on another bid that you're more likely to win. And so data and insight, do your research, understand the client's drivers, all that good stuff is imperative for good capture.
Yeah, fantastic. I think a lot of businesses out there, like I work as an engagement manager, similar, was a BDM previously, got involved with being our engagement manager. And I think that's a big thing. It's about building relationships, understanding the client and how you position yourself as a business. We're in print, but we have to understand where we fit in, how it works for the client, not only how it works for the client, but how does it work for us as a business? What are the benefits? How do we reap those benefits? And I think it's a big thing. And you hit the nail on the head, Jeremy. You said people buy from people. It's exactly the same. People like to work with certain people and they like to work a certain way. And I think if you can be at the forefront of that, of deciding how they work and how do they execute things and then fit in the middle of things, you can all rub again together really, really nicely to achieve something fantastic. So I think there's definitely a lot to kind of go away and think about. Now, I know that people are going to have questions and answers on here. So are you happy for me to put you on the spot? I know we didn't speak about questions and answers.
No, absolutely. There was just one point though, picking up on something you said,
go for it.
and it's not this isn't meant to be an advert for Hobs, but actually there is a key point that part of the tail end of capture might be proactive proposals. For instance, you might write a white paper for the client, do some research for them, present it to them. Of course, you might want to present that in some nice print that you guys can do. In construction world, you might want to walk clients through a visualization of how you deliver the project. Again, that's something that you guys do. And clearly, you know, I teach people capture, but also work on capture programs in the detail or just as a critical friend. Day to day, you know, capture is what I spend most of my time doing. I only actually work on probably 2 bids a year these days. Most of my time is all upstream in capture and account management. And so happy to talk to anyone about how they shape things, but certainly hit me with some Q&A. Let's have some fun with it.
Yeah, so ladies and gents, if there's any questions, feel free to shout up, raise a hand, and we can pick Jeremy's brains while we've got him on here. Rebecca, first hand straight up that I spotted, ask away.
So you'll need to come off of mute and put your camera on, Rebecca.
Oh. Rebecca, can you hear us? I can't take her off mute, unfortunately. Or can you potentially drop it in the chat for us?
I was going to say, have we got any chats already?
Dave, can you see if you can take Rebecca off of mute?
Yeah, hang on.
Oh, here we go. So she's
Do
actually
you
dropped it in
recommend
the
any
chat. Thanks,
tools?
Rebecca.
Do I recommend any tools or templates? Yes. So obviously, selfishly, there's a research and pursue workbook in the bid toolkit in the research and pursue phase of activity, so anyone can visit thebidtoolkit.com, although it is actually down today for maintenance, slightly ironically, so give it a couple of days, and you can go to the bid toolkit and download that workbook. But more generally, if you're an APMP member, you can undertake the practitioner qualification. We provide that as a video course, or we can teach that to corporates, you know, rooms of up to, or programs online these days of up to 20 people, where we can take you through the whole philosophy as well. But in basic terms, if you're an APMP member, I'd advise going and looking up what the syllabus is for the capture practitioner exam. It tells you which subject areas are involved in it, and just go and have a wander about the body of knowledge. Actually, I have to say, you know, APMP as a body of knowledge and as an association is getting much better. You know, 5-6 years ago we were in a not great place, I think, in terms of maturity. It's getting much better. From a bidding perspective, I don't necessarily agree with all of the process or the content that they have. It's a bit Americanized and misses out solution development for me. But actually, the capture related content is really quite strong, bizarrely. So, and perhaps why there was that move towards winning work bit. So yeah, I'd advise if you're an APMP member, have a wander about the body of knowledge, looking at the subject areas that are capture related, because there's actually some really good content in there for free, if you remember.
Fantastic, love that. Everyone loves a freebie. And Jeremy, I'm sure we can probably share your website on our Use These Better, so people can refer to it. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fine.
Get more information. Has anyone else got any other questions while we've got Jeremy here? Rebecca's going to reach out to you directly, Jeremy, after.
Yeah. I think one thing actually we didn't mention, Raquel. Yeah, I was thinking earlier. It's actually good to hang out with procurement people, as much as at times, you know, as Dave calls it, the sort of 3 o'clock in the morning when your bid's going horribly wrong, and you know procurement people have done something terrible to you in terms of shitty questions, clarifications, whatever it might be. actually a great education, because half of what you're going to be doing with capture is trying to get around procurement people actually. You know, it's a good idea to spend some time with procurement people, or at the very least take a look at the Chartered Institute of Purchasing Supplies strategic sourcing process, because that shows you what they're doing on their side of the fence, and you can think about largely if the client's operating full you know, proper SIPS procurement. And so you can, the stark thing when you look at that is that a great deal of their activity in terms of their market engagement, their market assessments, you know, who their supply chain, what their supply chain might look like in what shape, that all happens obviously way before an ITT is written, and that's all an opportunity for you to engage and try and influence them to shape it to benefit you, or to create the greatest value for the client and for you to take a share of that. So if you can harmonise with what procurement people are up to, understand and harmonise with what procurement people are up to on the other side of the fence, that gets you a long way down the road actually, because there's so much activity that happens before an ITT comes out.
Yeah, there's a lot of thought process that goes through it. We've got Francesca has raised a hand.
Hello, I just wanted to make the point that with public contracts, it's often worthwhile thinking about who's going to make the ultimate decisions and looking at, so for example, the procurement committee on a board. So I recently worked on a big rolling stock bid, and I did a little bit of research into the company and found out that 3 of the people who worked on the procurement committee of the board were actually also employees of the railway in quite junior, or you know, quite lowly positions, but because it was a Danish company, it was they were very sort of egalitarian in the view of who should be running boards. And actually, by making the point about providing good working conditions for the staff on the rolling stock, you know, I'd like to think that actually we did make a bit of a difference to the attractiveness of our proposal, because we'd actually thought about, you know, who's doing what. And similarly, I worked on a energy from waste contract, and realized that the guy who was chairing the board of the people who made the decisions was a very keen cyclist. So put in a proposal about putting a cycleway so people could actually cycle to the energy from waste depot. And you know, obviously it was a very tiny thing, but actually just showing that you're actually attuned to what the person who's going to be making the ultimate decision is interested in. Is not time wasted, I don't think.
No, I think you're bang on. Absolutely, that's good work. You know, there's the thinking out there that there's now up to 7 people involved in making procurement decisions on average across sectors. It's, you know, deals are not done on the golf course anymore with one executive. You know, there's very much a disparate decision-making piece in this. You know, there's different stakeholders to satisfy, procurement people. You can go back to the old sort of marketing stuff of the technical buyer, emotional buyer, you know, commercial buyer, etc. You know, who are those people and what's important to them? And actually in capture, pre-bid, trying to engage them, understand what keeps them up at night, and try and solve those problems through a negotiation. And then the worst case is you do what you've done, which is write some nice stuff in the bid that pulls their triggers, as it were. So yeah, absolutely, a key part of capture, and in the tools for it and the training is about understanding who all the stakeholders are, the assessment of those, you know, what keeps them up at night, their sphere of influence, and then an engagement plan to engage them throughout the process. And because it's a live capture piece, is a live program of activity over months and possibly years. So it's a campaign. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Understanding the who's who, what makes them tick, is absolutely key.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Francesca. Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's just thinking outside the box, and it's noticing, like Francesca said, an interest or a common ground that you can, I guess, add into your proposal or your bid. Anyone else got any questions? All's quiet. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much. We're going to add Jeremy's link to his website and his details. He is tagged into our LinkedIn posts on our Use These Better. And we did share Jeremy's details on our Hobs group LinkedIn profile as well. So if you can click on there, I'm sure Jeremy is up for messages or questions directly, or if you want to ask some opinions or point of views, he'd be happy to help you. Jeremy, thank you so much. Anyone that's joining this group, we've had a great turnout today. We've got another session next week on Tuesday with a lovely team from KPMG. We're going to be talking about everything from a bid perspective, but from a client side of the table, which should be really insightful for us all. Now, before I let you go, we're going to announce the winner of our 500 attendees to our Use These Better. And I've just been sent the details, so let me make sure that I get this right. We have, give me 2 seconds because I've saved it so I don't lose it. And it's Sana Stradling at Midas. Now, I don't know, I haven't checked the attendees if she's in attendance, but we'll be sharing it. She's won £1,000 worth of bid and design support with us. So I'm going to pop that on and we'll let Sana know. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we will be doing more competitions. So hopefully we'll see you again next week. For those of you that aren't following our Use These Better page on LinkedIn, there is a link in the comments section. So get added to that group and we will see you next week. Jeremy, thank you. You've been a star. Thank you for
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.